in ArcGIS Pro to do some analysis and create useful output. So to begin, I'm going to talk about, I'll just pull this over here. The scenario says you are hired by the Arkansas Fish and Wildlife Service to plan for a duck hunting park that is open to the public. The campground should meet three requirements. It needs to be close to duck habitats, far away from major cities, so that residents will not accidentally be hurt, and on public lands. The final deliverable to the park manager should include a map identifying all the suitable areas for duck hunting. And we're going to do that using some of the analysis tools within ArcGIS Pro. Let's go ahead and move this back out of the way here. And we're going to go ahead and start ArcGIS Pro, create a new project. This is lab 11. Store this where we normally store it. Labs, there we go. And we'll hit OK. Go ahead and turn off that topographic layer. It comes up, remove, and then we're going to add, and hopefully you've already downloaded and extracted your files if you're working along. We're going to go ahead and add a file in that data called AR Rivers. Let's go ahead and find that data. 11. Matter of fact, I've gone through this, so I need to go back and delete my old stuff here. Okay, I went ahead and deleted all that stuff so nobody gets confused. So we're going to go back in, add that data. We said it was going to be in here, data. We said it was AR Rivers. We're going to go ahead and add that. Okay, so we've got that added to our map. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a 5-kilometer buffer, 5,000 meters, around these rivers to increase the likelihood of finding suitable duck habitats. So we're going to use a geoprocessing tool. So we need to get that open first. Let's go ahead and close some of this stuff out here. Close this pane. I'm going to close this pane, and we're going to go into the geoprocessing tool. If you don't have it open down here, you can go into analysis and then tools. It'll pull up your geoprocessing pane. There's a variety of ways that you can find the buffer tool. We're going to use the easiest one here. Well, it's already it's already listed as a favorite here, but you should probably do this process anyway. So we'll write buffer and enter. And that's just a really quick way of finding tools, because it's almost impossible to remember every single tool within these toolboxes. For an example, I'll just go into toolboxes, look under 3D Analyst. You know, there's all of these here. Then you go into analysis tools. You know, there's these here, and so on and so forth. There's, you know, cartography tools. You know, you've got all these, especially whenever you start running into data management. You've got all these tools here, and then if you wanted to look under, you know, I don't know, fields, all of these. So it's impossible to remember all of these tools. So what you can do, I mean, it's just something nice to keep in your mind if you're trying to figure out a way to do something. Just type something in here and see what pops up. You know, you may find a tool that will help you perform your task. So we've got buffer here. We're going to hit enter, and it's going to be this first one, analysis tool. If you wanted to find that otherwise, you can go into toolboxes, analysis. It's under analysis tools. I don't remember exactly where it is. Yeah, it's under proximity. So here's buffer right here. Like I said, it's hard for me to remember where all this stuff is. Mostly because I use the search tool, and I keep it in my favorites. So anyway, so that's how we would find it. So we'll search for the buffer tool. You want to use buffer analysis tools. We'll click that once, and we're going to enter some parameters here. For your input features, we only have one here, but it's the feature around which you want to create a buffer. Okay, we want to create buffers around the AR rivers layer, so we're just going to choose that. Output feature class. Once again, we have an output, so that means we're going to create a new feature class, right? So that means we need to find a place to store it. We're going to navigate somewhere where we can store that. Lab, so I'm going to put this in lab 11. We're going to call this. See, this is still here for me. That's because ArcGIS Pro is kind of bad for updating things. But I'm going to go ahead and call that AR Rivers 5 kilometer buffer. Let's save. That will work. You won't have that. You won't have those files in there. Like I said, ArcGIS Pro is pretty bad at updating itself and refreshing and stuff like that, but this will work. So for the distance, we said it was going to be 5 kilometers, 5,000 meters, right? And that's going to be in linear units. Meters are linear units. You could also use a field. We'll get to that later. So we're going to keep linear units here. We're going to enter 5,000 and then meters. You could use kilometers. You'd have to use 5, kilometers. We're going to use 5,000 meters. Next, you can keep the site type as full. You keep the method as planar. Dissolve type. We do want to dissolve these, and you learned what dissolving does in some of the reading. So you want to dissolve all output features into a single feature, right? And what that's going to do is if you have buffers that overlap, it's going to combine those buffers together to make one polygon. Now, you're not going to have one polygon for all of these because you've got, different rivers, and those buffers aren't all going to overlap. So anyway, we've got that all filled out. When it's done, we're going to click Run. The buffer tool is going to run. It can take a little bit because this is a pretty large file, and it has to dissolve all of those overlapping buffers. So that takes a little bit of processing time. But when it's finished, you will have a set of buffers, a 5 kilometer buffer around all of your rivers in this layer. And it's still running. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to page 3 in our instruction. And we'll just wait for that to, I'm going to go ahead and pause and wait for this to run. Completed, and we can see that we have buffers around all of our rivers around here. So the buffer tool is completed. And that's really all there is to say about all that. I don't really like how this, rivers layer is coming in pink, so I'm going to change that color. And you don't necessarily have to do this, but I'm going to change it to like I don't want an outline color on it because it just kind of looks dumb. I'm going to change this to like a darkish blue, I guess. I'm going to apply and see what that looks like. Yeah, because rivers are blue, so they ought to be on here in blue. So there you go. There's that. So in our instruction on page 3, it says next we're going to create a variable distance buffer. So it's not going to be limited to just the 5,000 meters like we did on this one. It's going to be a variable distance. It's going to have different distances for each buffer that's created. And the instruction says the proximity to the city, that's hard to say. It should vary depending on the size of the city. And by size, they mean population. The second exercise will create a buffer. We'll create a buffer around the AR major cities shape layer using a variable distance buffer. This exercise involves 3 steps. First, you will open the cities layer attribute table and insert a new field that will hold the variable buffer distance. Second, you will use select by attributes to assign attribute values for the buffer distance. Third, you will apply the buffer tool to create the buffers. That's a lot of words. Let's just get into it. First we need to add the data. So we're going to go in and add AR major cities. Hit OK. come up in points. And then we're going to look at the attribute table. So we're going to go into table of contents, right click attribute table, and take a look at what we're dealing with. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because that's the field we're going to create. And we're going to go ahead and save that. Well, it looks like it's already saved. Okay, so we're examining the attribute table. The field pop class contains a value which represents a city's size. You'll create a buffer based on the values in this field. Cities with size class 6 will have a 6,000 meter buffer. Cities with 7 will have 7,000 meter buffer, so on. We've got 8 right here, so that's going to create an 8,000 meter buffer. Okay. So we need to use a field on which to base that buffer on, right? We don't have a field that says 6,000 here, right? So we're going to create a field that has 6,000, 7,000, so on and so forth. So let's create that field. We're going to click the add button here to add a field, and we're going to call it buffer underscore DIS. We'll change the type to long. It's already long, and then we're going to just go ahead and save. That'll commit that buffer, or I'm sorry, that'll commit that field. Once it applies the change, we'll close this. We can see that buffer disk is over here now. We have to populate this. So we're going to use the. I'm looking in the instruction here. It says the buffer distance should be proportionate to the city size. So we're just going to use the calculate. We're going to use calculate field to do that. So to use calculate field, we're just going to right click on this right here. Go to calculate field. We will double click on pop class to add it down here. And then we're going to multiply that number by 1,000. 1,000. And we'll just hit OK and watch this populate. There we go. Now we have our variable buffer distances that we're going to use as a basis to create buffers around all of these cities. Let's see here. I'm on page 4 of the instructions. It says click OK. We just did that. Your table will look similar to this. We're on page 5 now. Open the geoprocessing pane. Should still have the buffer tool up right here, right? So let's go back through and figure out what we want to put in these for these parameters. Input features, we want to run it on the cities, right? So we're just going to drop this down. Go to major cities. The output feature class, we need to save that in its folder. It's going to be right there. We're going to call it AR city buffer. Buffer. No, buffer. .shp. Okay, so this next bit for the distance, since we're not doing a fixed value here, we're going to base it field, right? So it's going to be based on the buffer distance field. Buff this. Okay, so what this is saying is that the distance is based on the value held in this field right here. 6,000, 7,000, so on. You will keep the method as planar, dissolve type. We're going to go ahead and change that to no dissolve. And that should be about it. We're going to go ahead and create those buffers now. So we'll hit run. And when it's finished, we should see variable distance buffers around all of our cities. This runs much faster. So there we go. We can see that we've got some buffers around all of these. It's a little bit difficult to tell, that they're different sizes, but you can definitely see that this one is a little bigger than this one here. It's kind of difficult to tell, from this far zoomed out how much larger those are, but I suppose you could zoom in. Yeah, now we can definitely see that this is much larger. Or, I mean, this is much larger than this one. So we've got our variable distance buffers created. I'm going to go ahead and zoom it out some here so we can see the whole deal. I don't really like these polygons, the symbology on them, but we can change that later. Let's go ahead and close that attribute table. So we've got our starting layers, right? We know our parameters. They need to be, on public land. They need to be, a certain distance from cities, and they need to be within a certain distance of rivers to increase the likelihood of finding ducks. So I'm on page 6 of the instruction now. It says creating overlays. You've created your starting layers. Now you'll apply some analysis. Number 1 says add AR public lands dot shape and AR state dot shape to the map. So we'll go ahead and do that. We said it was this one and this one. So we'll add both of those layers. They'll come up here. I'm going to go ahead and drag state down here because that's over the top of everything. I'm going to go ahead and drag public lands down to, I'm going to change this to like green. Public lands are best represented in green. Go ahead and hit apply. Yeah, that's better. Could be better, but we'll work on that later. So in the instruction even goes into this. It says you should have 5 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I've got 6. Yeah, you should have 6 layers, not 5. Especially if you added AR state. I think this was written before AR state was listed on here, but you should have 6. Arranged in logical order. Table of contents should look like this. So it's got major cities on top. It's got rivers next. City buffer, rivers buffer, public lands, AR state. Yeah, that's fine. Yep, that'll work just fine. Okay, so it goes into the logic for this analysis on page, what's this? On page 6, it says you will erase city buffers from public land because we can't have it, with the city buffer shows what we can't include in our duck hunting habitat. Then we'll intersect with the river because we do want to include that, and that'll identify potentially suitable areas. In the geoprocessing pane, we're going to go to here. We'll just go all the way back out of that. We're going to enter erase in the toolbar, and we see that the first one there is erase analysis tools, which is what we want to use. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And we said we were going to erase city buffers from public land, right? And that's what we're going to do. So the input feature is going to be our public lands because that's what we want to erase from. So that's going to be public lands. And the erase features is what we want to use as our eraser. That's going to be city buffer. Can't have that. So city buffer, and then we have an output feature class, so that means we're going to be creating a new shapefile. We need to locate where we want to put that, and we're going to call this public underscore city.shape and save. So we go back into the logic for this analysis. We're going to erase, because we know it can't be located close to a city. We're going to erase parts of the public lands using the city buffer. This is our erase feature is what we're using to erase, right? So we're going to go ahead and hit run and see what public city ends up looking like. Erase is going to run. It's going to run. There we go. There's erase. Let's see what that ends up looking like. That's here. It's green. Let's change this to like red, just to see what it looks like. We're probably not going to keep it like that. Hit apply, and then we can go in and look. We'll drag that down just to see what happened here. Zoom in a little bit. Huh. Okay, I had to pause it real quick to make sure everything ran correctly, and it did run correctly. I had zoomed in and looked at this area over here. And I thought this was a city, but it's not. Um, if this will stop doing that, you can zoom into some of these cities, and you'll see that the red portion, which is public city, the has been erased. This is the public land section that falls, within the city buffer. But this has been erased from it. And the same thing goes here. So it ran correctly. So we're going to go ahead and zoom back out. Go ahead and come all the way back out to the state level. Oh, what am I doing here? Zoom to layer. Here we go. Okay. So we have our public city layer created. And so now we want to have just those areas that are included that are near rivers, right? For our river, the portion of our river buffer. And I'm on page 7 of the instruction. Yeah, toward the bottom. Yeah, it says next you will overlay the public city layer on the river buffer layer. You want to find the common area between those two. So intersect will be the best tool to use. So we're going to include only the area for the river buffers, and then we're going to intersect that with the public city layer. So the public city layer that lies within the river buffer is going to be your new shapefile. And we'll see that here in just a second. I'm on page, let's see, yeah, this is page 8 at the very top. This is in the geoprocessing pane. It's analysis tools. We'll choose intersect. Intersect analysis tools. So we'll go ahead and click that. And we'll enter our parameters here. Our input, we've got 2 inputs here. Remember, we're going to intersect public city, so that's going to be the first one. And then we're going to intersect that with the rivers buffer. And our output is only going to be if the public city and the river buffer overlap the same area, that's going to be part of the new output. Okay, so we have, output feature class. So we've got an output, so that means we're going to create a new shapefile. We're going to call this public city river, SHP. And that represents public land, city land, or I'm sorry, public land, city buffer, river buffer. We'll hit save there. You'll want to join all attributes. The output type's going to be the same. We'll go ahead and hit run here. And this is going to be the final area of suitable duck habitats. It says intersect completed. So let's go ahead and take a look at this in the table of contents. We're going to change this from red. I'm going to change this to something weird looking here just so we can see what it looks like. I'm going to change this like purple. I don't know. Apply, and then we can see that only the sections of the river and the public land are selected on. So let's go ahead and turn off some of these layers to see what we actually came out with. Yeah, there we go. These are the areas that are going to be suitable for duck hunting. Oh, I'm trying to figure out a better way to explain this, but yeah, that's basically it. Now, well, I'm going to go back in the instruction here. Yep, so I'll add resulting shapefile, public city river, contains acceptable areas for duck hunting. Your deliverable for this is going to be to create a layout that includes the final acceptable areas for duck hunting. You'll export it to JPEG, include all your map essentials, north arrow, title, scale bar, legend, authorship. The rubric is included here, and a sample map is included. I don't like just this. Um, if we have all of these layers turned off and only this, turned on, or even only this, this doesn't show you, proximity to anything. This is kind of a useless map right here. You don't know if you were to print this and hand this to someone and say, "Tell me what this is." They could probably read a title and say, "Oh, well, this is," read the title, but they wouldn't have any proximity. They wouldn't know anything, about the map. So you don't have to do this. The instruction, the example, the instructor's illustration only shows, Arkansas and then the final output. Personally, I would turn on the cities. So at least we know their proximity to cities, right? I would probably change this to something a little better. Maybe red, I guess. Yeah, I can see that a little better. I would probably change this to like I would change the color to like, yeah, change that outline to black. Yeah, yeah, you can see that much better now. Um, I would probably put rivers on here. You can see our blue rivers on here now. City buffers, nobody cares what the city buffer is because they don't care what the city buffer is. They care about, the final output. So I wouldn't add city buffer on here. I wouldn't add the river buffer. You could put public lands on there, I guess, just so people know what the public lands in Arkansas is. Proximity is key here. That's what we're trying to show. And so for an output or for the if I had to submit this, this is probably something pretty similar to what I would submit. I'd probably change the symbology of some of these a little, but this is really what I would submit, um, or close to it. And so we would just do a new layout. This is probably go with the landscape. It is kind of a square, kind of difficult to tell what you want to do, but drag this down. We'll zoom to that layer. I'm just kind of experimenting here, just to kind of show you what you should be capable of doing. Leave a little space, I guess, for a legend. We know that Arkansas is kind of squarish anyway, so we'll just kind of do that. Probably turn that border off. Yeah, turn the border off. I don't like that border on that. And then you can add a legend over here. Your north arrow. You can put your authorship block, I guess, down here, or maybe across the bottom. I don't know. Maybe over here. You can put your north arrow over here since it's kind of dead space. You can put a title. You could even put a title here. Above a legend. Uh, that would allow you to make your map a little larger. Yeah. So yeah, just kind of play around with it if this is something that you want to do. I mean, you're going to have to create a layout anyway. I'm not going to tell you what layout to create because you need to use your good skills that you've learned during this, to kind of figure that out. I don't like public lands there. Yeah, no, we're going to put that right back where it was. Um, yeah, so just kind of use, your thinking skills and make a map that you believe fills the bill for this lab. Anyway, that's about it for this. It can be a little bit complicated, but you really just kind of think through, some of these things, and if you have to, say it out loud. If that will help you, work out whatever issues you have. That's what I do. I actually talk these things out. I say it out loud. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to stop wasting your time. Go forth and do great things. If you have any questions, we are available. Give us a holler.